All right, let's get you started on your new camera. And by your, I mean your. This is my friend Grace. This is not her now. We just wanted to embarrass her. Happy birthday, kiddo. I'm glad you expressed a interest in photography and videography, unlike my own kids. Okay, the camera that Grace is getting is a Nikon. By the way, Grace, if you're over there, you have to say Nikon.
This is the Nikon Z50.
This is the new Nikon Z50.
All right, getting started with your new camera. The first thing you want is you're gonna want a battery and a memory card. Most entry-level cameras, the memory card slot is, in the same compartment as the battery. And Grace, I'm giving you this memory card that has 128 gigabytes, which is plenty for photo and video. And the first thing you should probably know is how to put a lens on. So every camera has a lens release button right here. And on Nikon, you twist to the right this way. And other cameras, for the most part, everyone else, you twist to the left like you're taking it off, which makes more sense, lefty-loosey. But here you'll actually see the sensor in your camera. Now you don't want to expose the sensor for too long because then when you start to take pictures, you may see dust in your photos, which starts to get annoying and you have to fix it. And to put the lens back on, there's always a dot on your camera and a dot on the lens that you line up. And then you twist, again on Nikon, it's going to be left, other cameras will be right. Now this lens in particular, for example, if I turn on the camera here, there's always a little message that tells you, hey, you cannot take pictures yet. And it's because this lens actually is a compact lens that needs to be unlocked. And as soon as you unlock it, now it's ready to take photographs. Now, most cameras nowadays can shoot photos and videos, and you'll usually find a little switch. So on this camera, there's a little switch here that shows you photo to video. And some other cameras have the change on the dial itself. So you'll see a little icon that shows the movie mode on the dial. You'll also have some control wheels. Usually there's a front one. So this camera has a front one on there, and there's a back one. Now, what's great about today's cameras is you can set up the camera any way you want to control it. A lot of the buttons and dials are customizable. So as you start to progress and get better and better, you're going to kind of figure out, oh man, I use this feature all the time. Let me put it on this button. And so this camera has two front buttons, and they're set to something on here. I'll tell you in a second. Now, Grace, in photography and videography, you have to worry about exposure. And not like, becoming famous, not that kind of exposure. Exposure is that you can see your picture or your video. The three things that control exposure are your aperture, which is your lens opening. There's a little iris on your lens that you control. The second one is the shutter speed. So you actually have a shutter which opens up, lets in light, and then closes. That could be really fast, or you can have a really slow shutter speed if you want to make water blurry or cars streaky. You can actually control your shutter speed. And the third one is ISO or ISO, which kind of goes back to the film days. Just ask your mom and dad. But on the camera here, you'll see a little button that says ISO. If you increase your ISO, your image will actually get brighter. Now be careful because you could use ISO to expose everything, but the higher you go, the more noisy and grainy your photos and videos will get. So you kind of have to figure out your new camera and look at the pictures and look at the video and see like how comfortable you are with how much noise you're getting.
Make it get and then the Red Sox won 4 home times.
Now, if you notice, this little thing right here is flashing. This is your meter. This tells you your exposure, and that's basically telling us that it's way too dark. So if you notice, if I lower my shutter speed more and more and more, the little needle starts to go up to the middle. Once it's in the middle or above, that means, once it's in the center, that means our photo is properly exposed. But you can make it a little brighter if you want, like if you're photographing snow, or you can make it a little darker if you're photographing something that's too bright. The meter, you're smarter than your meter, so you can kind of figure that out. That's if you're in manual mode. Remember, if I go to P mode, the camera meter will always be centered, unless you use something called exposure compensation. And that little button is right here. That is an override. So you want the camera to be bright, you want the exposure to be brighter or darker than what the camera is giving you. So you can push that little button, and you'll see I'm set to -3. So I can actually use the back dial to go to 0, or I can make the picture brighter using exposure compensation. Okay. By the way, look how slow my shutter speed is here. I'm at 1/8 of a second, 1/10. So if you're starting to get blurry photos, that just means that your room is too dark, okay? Now to combat that situation, you can actually add more light, open your drapes, turn on more lights, use a flash, or you can, change your ISO to auto. And now notice auto ISO just went insane and it raised our shutter speed so we could take a picture of that dog. Now this will at first take a little juggling, this exposure triangle thing, juggling the 3 settings and what you like and need, and is your shutter speed too slow or too fast? But to begin with, you can actually let the camera do some of the work. So those of you with a new camera out there, I recommend you start in program mode. And in program mode, the camera will pick the shutter speed and it will pick the aperture on the lens for the situation. This is a good way to get started and start taking pictures.
We have red, white, and blue stars.
Keep those on.
Now, one of the problems with P mode is that the camera doesn't always pick what you want. With the one that really gets you into trouble is the shutter speed. It may pick a shutter speed like 1/25 of a second because indoors is too dark. So in that case, you'll want to raise your ISO to something a lot higher, or you actually can have ISO be on autopilot. You can actually have auto ISO. And you can usually pick a minimum shutter speed to keep you safe. I usually put 1/200 because it's safe enough for handshake. If you want to go to auto ISO, you just have to push your ISO button and flick this little front dial on the front here, and it automatically goes to auto ISO right there. Couple other things on the camera. There's a little button here, which is your view mode. You can cycle through just being able to look in the viewfinder, just having the screen. Also, there's a little sensor here that turns off the screen and turns on the EVF. As you can see in there, the screen turns on. And a lot of times on cameras, you won't see anything on the screen because you accidentally bump this button. Right now, it's full-time EVF. So you have to keep pushing it till here says monitor only. You want to see automatically switch display, and now it'll use that little sensor. Now sometimes this little sensor gets dust or gets a hair in there, and you might have to wipe this off for it to work again. Your I menu or quick menu. Most cameras have a little grid or something that you can get into quickly to make changes. On this camera, you can actually touch and flip through, or you can use the directional dial here, which is great. You have your playback button here. If you want to look through your photos, you can actually swipe, which is neat. You can also double tap anywhere on the photo and go back. Come on. You could double tap and it will zoom in where you double tap. On some other cameras, if you double tap, it will only zoom in to where your camera focused. You also will see where the camera focused, the little box there. And then you can actually use it like a phone. You can zoom in and look around. You can control what information is shown on the back of your camera by just hitting this display button, and it actually will cycle through a bunch of different options for you to look through. And it's the same thing if you're looking at your photos. You can actually just, cycle through the different looks if you want more information about the picture you took. Now in photography, there's 3 modes of autofocus. The first one is single autofocus mode, which means the camera will autofocus and then stop focusing. This is great if something's not moving. You'll see that little green box, and then you can fire your photo. The next one, I'm gonna push my front function button and actually twist this front dial here. You'll see it goes to AFC. That's called continuous autofocus. And this is if something is moving towards you. So if you're shooting sports or your dog running at you, you go to continuous. The camera will continue to autofocus and you can fire shots away. Now, mostly with most cameras that are advanced, like my Z8 here, I leave it full time on continuous because it's so fast and I never shoot single focus. But on this camera, actually is pretty good if you want to switch between single and continuous, because the continuous on this isn't as great as mine. And the last mode is manual focus mode. This is good if you're actually just want pinpoint control of maybe something you're photographing, like a flower or something, and you want to turn the autofocus off. Now on video mode, there is a additional one, which is AFF, and that's called full. I think that's what it stands for, but this one is just usually looking for you. See, if I'm gonna vlog on the camera like this, the little screen comes down, I could see myself, and now, hi Grace, I'm in your camera. And yeah, you can actually see all your controls at the bottom, and you can vlog like this. So Grace, those are the basics on your camera. I hope it gets you started, and I hope you enjoy your gift and take lots of photos and videos. And you know, happy birthday, kiddo. We love you.
Even we watch a soccer or
Okay, guys.